Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video, what I have for you today, it is a classic, right? It has you got the setup, you got the mess up, and then you got the good old trying to destroy evidence right in front of an investigator, which is... it's very funny.
You don't have to be like that about it.
This whole story takes us to North Dakota, and much like the movie, set there, Fargo, and the city, I guess you could say too, they share a lot of DNA. And what I mean by that is this one kind of plays out like a dark comedy. I think every case I've actually covered that's set in North Dakota plays out like that. And there's a Canadian involved in this one too, so you know what that means. That's the real Our Flag Means Death. In the middle of a frozen Dakotan winter, there was a smoky fire, which unearthed a steamy affair, which led to the cold and grim shackles for more than one person. Two star-crossed lovers who wanted to spend the rest of their lives together, which, they ain't gonna be doing now. Damn straight. This is a story of, once again, a nice, lovely couple. They had it all till one wanted a little more. It's a story of greed, which, gives you stars in your eyes and a knife in your hand, though not literally in this one.
We have all the evidence to kind of know what happened here. And a crime scene like that, and what happened to Chad, could have been done by someone that could be construed as a monster, or it could be someone that, if they had a reason for that, but it would need to be explained. Otherwise, it's going to look like it was done by someone who was a monster.
This is a story of lies, of shrinking into yourself in the hopes that this will all go away, that maybe they'll feel sorry for little old you. It's a story of the many shapes cruelty can take, and how you can cry with one hand, hold a knife in the other, and still consider yourself a human being. It's a story of wanting it all, it's a story of doing it all, and then kind of like deservedly so getting nothing in return. You know what I mean. Or you will. Let's give it a go. Right smack dab in the middle of North Dakota lies the city of Bismarck, baby. Home to about 74,000 people. Been there, done that, I guess, when it comes to kind of listing out what, stuff about Bismarck, right? The story of Chad Isaac, if you remember that one was set there. The dentist who loved the sight of blood so much he had to keep the party going with a knife. Or Doug Carlisle, that was another one that was set in this area. I'm telling you guys, every time I go to North Dakota, shit gets weird.
You bet.
Although it is kind of strange that I just know geography through murder, like you list the town. Oh yeah, that guy was killed there. That's probably kind of worrying. Anyway, here's another one. On the 2nd of January 2020, a Thursday, at roughly 5:20 PM, a 911 call was made. That call was coming from a house located at 4900 43rd Avenue Northeast, about 15 minutes from downtown Bismarck. The remote side of town, surrounded by fields and flats and not much else. Oh wait, there is more. Snow. January, North Dakota, temperatures get down to minus 28 degrees Celsius, minus 18 Fahrenheit. That's freeze your bollocks off temperature right there.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
4900 43rd Avenue, Northeast.
Okay, and is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can I get your name, please?
Nikki Entzel.
On the line was Nikki Entzel. She was checking on her husband Chad, who she hadn't seen in quite a few days. When she arrived to that house after work, outside, the house looked grand. But then she bravely ventured inside, and the smoke was unbearable, so she came outside and she called the emergency number, that is 911.
I came out here to check. My husband sent a text message that he didn't come in today, and I've been good 3 days, and so I'm coming here to check. And I walk in, I open the back door, and I walk in, and the house is smoky. I can't get in the door. It's smoky in the house.
Okay, so you see smoke?
I can see inside the, and our Washington's black, and it's smoky in there, and I can't get in the door.
Okay, do you see any flames at all?
The call, which, God love the operator, quickly devolved into this. So.
Nikki, calm down for me, okay? Nikki.
I'll spare you anymore because that's painful. So the house was on fire, her husband was within, or believed to be within, and you couldn't see jack shit.
Nikki, what's your husband's name?
Yeah.
Swiftly, fire, EMTs, police all arrived to that scene, firefighters going in first to see where the fire was and what was the extent of the damage. And as they walked through the house, upstairs in the back bedroom, not visible from the front of the house, that's where they found Nikki's husband. His name was Chad Entzel, and he was naked and he was dead on the floor of the house. Laying on the bed was a shotgun.
In tonight's top story, part of 43rd Avenue Northeast, east of Centennial Road, was blocked off to traffic for hours.
And here's what we know at this hour. According to the Burleigh County Sheriff's Corporal, there was a structure fire affecting a single-family home, but there is only minor damage inside. There was one victim involved, but would not answer any follow-up questions about their condition.
On the ground lay a propane heater, much like this one. And those heaters, you gotta be dangerous, especially going around this time of year, lads. House go poof in like 2 seconds. And that seems to be what happened here. Only with a shotgun involved, huh? It seemed like the propane heater was the source of the fire, where it started in the bedroom. The only question was, did it happen before or after Chad was dead on the floor? As I said, this was on the 2nd of January, so Happy New Year! Going through the house further, in the basement of that rural home, there had been another fire. It was smouldering, and it was on top of the furnace in the basement. From initial glances, it seemed like self-inflicted shotgun wound. Chad, he had enough, and then careless use of propane heaters made the house go poof, or at least get very, very smoky. And 42-year-old Chad Entzel, he lost his life. Chad Entzel was a North Dakotan, born and bred, raised in the small town of Halliday, northern North Dakota, in the oil lands. He went to school, he went to college for drafting, and he later ended up in Bismarck, working at Interstate Power Systems, a truck engine distributor and mechanic. What Chad really loved, though, was coaching the Little League. He was he's well looked up to by Little Leaguers, and he was also in the bowling league. But Chad was known, around town. He was a nice, friendly, happy chap. In 2016, he married Nikki Entzel, and he also helped raise her 2 boys from a previous relationship, Marcus and Christopher. His missus, and the one who found him, was Nikki. She was 41 years old, and she worked as a transportation clerk for US Foods. She had always been involved in transportation. They actually hadn't been together that long. They met in 2015 at the racetrack. Of course they did. And 1 year later, they tied the old knot. Chad, who had a daughter from a previous relationship, now gained a wife and 2 teenage sons. A wife who loved her selfies, the ones with the filters and the very flattering angles. I mean, come on, this isn't 2006. But what Nikki really loved, see, Chad wasn't the only one with hobbies. Not at all. Was sweets. Nikki had her own business, her own little side hustle, Nikki's Savory Seats. Here's a hot tip. If you're going to advertise your business on your Facebook profile, maybe spell it right. She made cakes, buns, all the things, Because every great event, big or small, the food is the first thing talked about. Let's make your... It ends there is no more. Let's make your what, Nikki? So by January 2nd, when he was found, Chad had not been seen by anyone in a couple of days. Not by his wife Nikki, nor by his co-workers at Interstate Power Systems. In fact, get this, a welfare check had been done to that exact house a couple of hours earlier, if you can believe that, at 1:20 p.m. His friends from work, not having seen him, they called the cops asking, would you go have a look, see, if he's okay? We haven't heard from him. A police officer arrived. They didn't see anything wrong. Because the fire was in the bedroom at the very back of the house and it wasn't that big, it was just very smoky. Seemed fine, he left. Then 4 hours later, Nikki walked into the house herself and yada yada yada.
Down for me, okay? Nikki.
Chad was last seen on the 30th of December, 3 days before. It had been a regular day of work for Chad. And after he'd gone to the local bowling alley, he was in the league there playing away. And he was out the door at about 10:30 p.m. The next day, he was a no-show at work. Nikki called in for him though, saying he was under the weather, he had the flu, which, around this time of year, everybody gets it. That was December 31st. The following day was New Year's Day, day off work, so that's fine. Then, though, by the 2nd, still his friends texting him, calling him to no response. They finally, and he was a no-show at work, so they finally...
I'm calling to see if you guys could do a welfare check on one of our employees. His wife called in sick for work on Tuesday, and we haven't heard from him since.
Called Nikki. Nikki said she was busy. She said she hadn't seen him, but she would check on him after work, which she did. Here we are. She found him, as did the firefighters. When they were going into that house, they found Chad, they found the shotgun, they found the heater. Also spread around the room were bottles of whiskey. Perhaps Chad had been having a few sips before he did the deed. While Nikki was at the scene, she was sitting in a police car with a police officer while the firefighters were doing their thing, and Nikki said it was no coincidence, she wasn't in the house for a couple of days and she hadn't seen him. In fact, she'd been staying at a nearby motel for the last couple of days for two reasons. One was that the furnace wasn't working and she couldn't stand the cold, and two, Chad was a horribly abusive son of a bitch. He was a mean drunk and he was like that a lot. She even had photos of the abuse on her phone raring to go, ready to show the police officer. Here, look at this, look at this! The kids were with her grandparents at the time, and Nikki was making plans to get out of there. She was going to move to Texas. She already had some interviews for jobs lined up down there. She was Audi 5000, my friends. So what happened to Chad was tragic, but I guess, it's one of those situations where it kind of just works out for the best for everybody. In a way. So that was until while Nikki was telling the police officer of their relationship and the abuse and how she was in the midst of leaving him, the EMTs were getting Chad's body out of the house and they turned him over and they saw, on his back they found some more injuries though. See, he had shot himself in the face with the shotgun, but he also had bullet wounds in his back. So, whoa, what did he do with the shotgun? And another thing was that the shotgun was like a little too far from his body for him to have done it himself. It's like he shot himself and then threw the gun up in the air, it went off midair and landed on the other side of the room. They also found a box addressed to one Earl Howard. Now, it was like an Amazon box addressed to an Earl Howard. Obviously, it was Chad and Nikki's home, so who was Earl Howard then? 2 days later, Nikki was calling to claim insurance, house insurance for the fire damage that had been done.
Hello, my name is Bobby McMillian. I'm calling with Homesite Insurance. This is regarding the claim that was reported. I'm the adjuster assigned. Just wanted to touch base with you, give us more information.
Yes, I was getting ready to call you to figure out what our next steps need to be. I've been looking on my list.
Okay. Yeah.
I went to the house.
I'm sorry.
I went to the house yesterday. And deputy took me out there. It's burned.
Did you take any type of photos or anything like that?
I couldn't. I started crying, so they got me back out. Because my husband passed away in the fire.
Now, the insurance had only been purchased on the 26th of December, only a couple of days prior to her house going up in smoke. Whoa, look at you, good timing. And for Nikki, it was time to move on with her new boyfriend. See, it didn't take too long for the police. They were curious about this name, Earl Howard, but they rediscovered it pretty quickly when who he was. Well, maybe they kind of could guess. Because Nikki told the police she'd been staying at the Staybridge Suites in town, while she was trying to escape her abusive husband. But the room she was staying at was in Earl Howard's name. Earl Roy Howard was a Canadian fella from Bellwood, Ontario. Downtown, middle of nowhere. Bismarck was a bustling metropolis for him. Himself and Nikki had been having an affair for over a year by the time our story begins. Now, Nikki would say she had left Chad for good reason. Chad, she told the police he was abusive, and she was telling everybody that he was a mean-ass drunkard. Having a snifter fist soon followed, especially for her, and it was on the regular, and she had pictures to prove it. He was always at drinking, God knows where, and she was spreading the word to anyone who would listen, and as you know, the word is the bird. On the 7th of January, 5 days after Chad died, was found dead, now it's believed he was murdered, Nikki was questioned by the police.
I can get through this and get done. Like I said, I cleared my schedule. I might have to jump out to take a phone call here now and then, just because I can't completely hide away.
She was keeping pretty quiet about everything, not just about the affair, I mean, literally everything. She mumbles and whispers. Through the entire interview, she has this kind of little quiet, shy girl routine kind of going on. See how well that works out for her.
can't tell you how sorry I am. Okay, that's me. I'm sorry for that.
She was the dutiful wife, though, after all, who was deep in mourning for the husband she hated. So she talks like that pretty much through the entire interview. I won't keep you. So the interview kind of goes on like that, kind of for a while, kind of drags out, and then the detective is softballing her. Then a Bureau of Criminal a BCI agent comes in, and he doesn't take any shit from Nikki. But Nikki, she's immediately like,
Nikki, this is Joe Aarons.
Hi.
He's with Bureau of Criminal Investigations.
Well,
Hello.
And
I have to go soon.
he turned up the propane heater, if you will.
The biggest thing you need to be doing right now is you gotta be honest about everything.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of information. I was at the crime scene. I helped process the crime scene. Chad knows Earl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they friends?
They've met, they've hung out, said he's came over and...
What did Chad think of you going and staying in a hotel room with Earl? Chad didn't think anything of that? Really?
No.
I'm a married man myself. He's married. That would not fly with... I don't know any guy that would fly with that.
I guess I
Would
don't.
go stay... What would you have done if Chad had went and stayed with Earl's wife in a hotel room while you stayed home? Come on. I'm sorry, I can't understand you. Look at me, Nikki. You feel bad about what happened, don't you? What's happened to Chad at this point?
Has nothing to do with what happened to Chad.
Right. Here's the deal on this. The longer time goes on, what you do know, it's not going to get any easier. I'm not trying to be mean to you. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you in any way. But people who lie to me, I feel that's being disrespectful to me. And your continuous lying isn't working.
Nikki would kind of sort of confess to what happened that night or what she knew happened. She would say she was staying at a motel with Earl. Her and Earl went over to the house where Chad was. They were going to gather the last of Nikki's stuff because they were going out. Well, she said she was going to Texas, so they were getting out of there. But when they arrived at the house, Chad was there and he was drunk and his boyfriend was there. Now that part came way out of the blue that he had a boyfriend. She also decided to mention that he also had these horrific gambling debts. Anyways. That was one story she told.
Well, it's still not making sense to me, and honestly, the reason some of it's not making sense is because you keep lying to me. Almost everything I've asked you about the events, you've lied about.
She essentially kept coming out with more and more bullshit until she finally said, okay, her and Earl, they went to the house, Chad was there, she left, she heard a gunshot, Earl came out, she doesn't know what happened.
So Earl was the only one who went in the house that time. Okay, that's not what I asked you. Don't answer questions that I didn't ask you. I asked you if... So Earl went in. Is the only one that went in the house. You didn't go in the house with Earl. So if you were in our shoes, what would you do? Figure it out. How am I supposed to do that? And I'm getting to the point where I'm struggling and not think that maybe you were the one who did it. It's all the exact same shit.
Nikki would even give the police a handwritten confession detailing that. For like 5 minutes. Because then she tried to do this.
You don't have to be like that about it.
See, things were becoming pretty clear at this point what had happened to Chad. CCTV showed that the day Chad was last seen, while he was bowling, Nikki and Earl had gone to the house and collected a load of their items. Good thing too, because the house would soon go up on fire. They brought all these back then to the Staybridge Suites motel. All the things Nikki could not bear to see go up in flames, of course. All these little items she had collected over the years. She had Earl, her husband, not so much. Then they left, Chad arrived, and around 1 AM, from the lock system they could tell, the door was opened. And then they left at about 3 AM, most likely shooting Chad as he slept. See, the cameras had been deactivated. They could tell by Nikki. The cameras kept a record. So they had no footage of them going into the house in the middle of the night, but the lock system, that told otherwise. Nikki, when asked about this, said she was just going in to get some of her medication, her bits and bobs, as she was in the middle of leaving Chad. She was doing that in the middle of the night. And then the fact that she spent over 2 hours in there, well, come on now. The presence of an accelerant was also detected at the scene, and it's believed some cigarettes helped the fire grow. The same brand of cigarettes were found in Earl's truck. They also found this video, or a link of it, sent from Nikki to Earl, which is kind of like...
If these cheap Kmart earrings are the best you can do this Christmas, then you can just follow them out the f***ing door.
Gleefully killing your spouse on a fire. And within, Chad, he had taken out a $600,000 life insurance policy a year before in 2018, with Nikki being the sole beneficiary, along with like $26,000 in house insurance. I told you, it is all the hallmarks of a classic.
It's all the exact same shit.
So yeah, that was kind of like clear enough. The only thing that wasn't too clear was Earl. Wasn't clear because he had done a runner. On the 8th of January, the day after that interview and Nikki's confession, a warrant was issued for Earl Howard. Watch out, he's Canadian!
Burleigh County authorities are looking for this man, Earl Howard. He's been charged with killing Chad Entzel on December 30th. Officers found Entzel's body on Thursday.
Nikki Entzel is now being bonded on a $500,000 cash bond.
The following day, on the 9th of January, Earl was found and he was arrested in Port Huron, Michigan, literally right across the border from Canada. He was going home. See, Nikki and Earl, they had the plans. They had the big plans that involved life insurance, it involved house insurance, and it involved both of them going up and out to Texas to live large, with spurs and beers. The only way they could do it was to get rid of Chad and get some cha-ching. So as I said, they shot Chad twice while he slept, but they took one of these shotgun shells. After all, he couldn't shoot himself twice. So they had to make it look like he did it to himself. They strategically put whiskey bottles in his bedroom to, back up Nikki's story of him being a drunkard. And then they put a propane heater right beside him in the hopes that, it was close to the bed, hoping that it would, burn away any evidence of murder and, just leave a skeleton there. Then they left. But then they kind of hit a snag, because the following morning, on the 31st of December, Nikki and Earl, they got up, they were like, shouldn't there be news of the big fire we were starting? Maybe in the news somewhere? Something? No? No. The fire didn't start. So guess what happened then? They went back to the house. Again, they moved the propane heater to try and hopefully start the fire a bit better, and they also started another fire in the basement on top of the furnace. That didn't really go anywhere. I'm not really kind of too sure what they were trying to do there. But this time, it just got a little smoky. And then Nikki was kind of sort of forced into checking on him on the 2nd of January by his friends who were asking all about him. The photos of the abuse, they were faked. That's makeup for you. And then she called in for Chad on the 31st of December.
He was too sick to come to the phone. He had the black lung.
New Year's Day, Nikki and Earl knew no one would be looking for him then. But the 2nd of January, well, that's when the word spread. Nikki and Chad just hoped that by then the house would be a smoldering wreck. They were shit-ass wrong. And finally, to say, Chad was a sweetheart. Everybody who knew him said, everybody who knew him much longer than Nikki, he'd only been married to her for like 4 years by this stage, they had seen him in every sort of scenario. He was not a violent nor an abusive person. Nikki and Earl were both charged with the murder of Chad, along with, well, everything else. However, the actual charge of murder wouldn't be applied to either of them because essentially, they couldn't say which one of them pulled the trigger and actually did the deed. They were due to stand trial together, but shortly before that could happen, Earl pleaded guilty to the charges of conspiracy to commit arson, conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence, and conspiracy to commit murder. He was sentenced to 25 years.
43-year-old Earl Howard of Ontario entered a plea agreement that would sentence him to 25 years in prison, with additional suspended sentences for 3 of the counts if he violates probation. Friday, he pleaded guilty to 4 charges.
Nikki herself went on trial in 2022. The prosecutor called over 40 witnesses to the stand, the defense 0.
It will show that Nikki Sue Entzel and Earl Howard agreed to kill Chad Entzel, agreed to set the house on fire, to collect the insurance benefits and to cover up the murder, and agreed to tamper with evidence by destroying or disposing of that second shotgun shell and setting the fire to cover up the evidence of the murder. You will find at the end that Nikki Entzel is guilty. Thank you.
The defense was, though, that it was Earl. Earl, he did everything. Because, see, the Earl was due to be a witness, but the prosecutor never called him. So the defense was saying, well, why didn't the prosecutor call Earl? You know, probably because he could say something that would exonerate Nikki. Though why the defense then didn't call him, I'm not so sure.
The picture doesn't come in the full view because we're missing the biggest, most important piece. His name's been mentioned how many times? Why did we not have the alleged co-conspirator here to testify? He's the one guy that can give all the answers.
The defense, though, was like a weak fart. No power, no rumble, no presence.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled action, do make the following finding regarding the defendant Nikki Sue Melissa Entzel. Conspiracy to commit murder. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant Nikki Sue Melissa Entzel guilty. Conspiracy to commit arson. As to the charge of conspiracy to commit arson, we find the defendant...
Nikki was found guilty after 2 hours of deliberation. Nikki Entzel still has not been sentenced. That's to come, though likely she'll be facing life in prison. So once again, we have a story of, you know, just get a divorce. Oh wait, no. That's why you don't want to get a divorce. Though, you know, if she hadn't just messed up the murder of her husband so badly, she could actually be living large in Texas. I mean, the fact that you did it shitly, and then had to go back the next day and do it properly, and it still didn't work out, is batshit. His body was still found in decent enough condition. They could tell he'd been shot twice. I mean, if the fire had just been a little bit worse, you know, no autopsy would have been done because they would have, you know, believed it was self-inflicted, and Nikki and Earl would be sipping cowboy juice in Texas. Instead, they're sipping spit, I don't know, in prison. Anyway, something shit. Chad was not aware his wife was cheating on him. Chad was not aware she was staying in a local motel with Earl. She had told her husband she was out of town on a business trip doing her thing. That's why she wasn't with him for these few days over New Year's. Chad had not a clue what was coming. So I kind of guess it goes without saying that Nikki was a pretty horrible person. Selfish would be an understatement, I think. I mean, selfish is hogging all the chocolate, not, well, you know. I mean, cheating on Chad with Earl, okay, right, that's one thing. But then plotting with Earl to brutally murder Chad in cold blood is something else. Doing all of this just to be able to move down to Texas together with his life insurance he'd only taken out a year before. Nikki's gears started grinding probably right then. That takes a special kind of cruelty, and Chad had no idea this was coming at him like a freight train, no idea to duck out of the way. So they killed him, messed up the cover-up of the murder, and then when Nikki was confronted, she went into this kind of little girl routine.
Oh, who, me?
It's like she's back in school and the principal is shouting at her. She shrinks, she lies. I don't know is the only thing that comes out of her mouth, whispered in the hopes that this will all go away. That maybe they'll feel sorry for her and leave her alone. The only person to feel sorry for is Chad. And then, of course, was her move to try and rip up her own confession in the interview room with the detective sitting right beside her. I mean, what was her hopes? What was she thinking she was going to do? Maybe something like this. thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. It always really does mean a lot. So yeah, here, I'll see you as always. I mean, to cut a long story short, I'll see you as always real soon in the next solo video coming real soon. But until then, please, as always, take care of each other, take care of yourselves, because I love you. Mike out.